Hello, everyone. Welcome to Branded. I'm your host, Sarah. Today, I'm going to dismantle everything you know about creating a personal brand because the idea that personal branding is something that you build, something you sit down and create, something that starts with a color palette, a bio, content pillars, and a mood board, that's not actually what a personal brand is. That's like a very small fraction of it. And the reason I want to start here today is because most established business owners have been creating their brands like this for years. And most of us are still operating from this definition, a definition of personal branding that, quite honestly, might be keeping you stuck in a version of your brand that no longer fits you or your business. So, here's what we know. You already have a personal brand. You've had one for as long as you've been in business, probably longer. So the question worth asking isn't how to build one. It's whether the one that you already have is still telling the story you actually want to be telling. Let me give you a useful example here. Your personal brand is the impression that forms in someone's mind when they're thinking about you. It's not what they read in your bio or when they land on your website. It's when they're driving down the road and they just start thinking about you. It's how they're telling their friends about you. It's how they describe what it is that you're doing for them. That impression that they have, that's your brand. It's constantly being formed by every piece of content you're putting out, every client interaction that you have, every time someone experiences your work, your process, or the way you show up in a conversation. Every time someone tries to explain what you do and either they nail it or they stumble trying, all of that is your brand. It's already happening, it's already out there, it's already shaping how people decide whether to follow you, refer you, hire you, or scroll past you. And none of us are really building our brands with this in mind. So, some of your brand, sure, it gets shaped on purpose, but some of it is like residual, pulling from a you that you were 3 years ago. Some of it shows exactly what you do, and some of it probably makes you cringe a little because it's not even close. That mixture, the intentional creation and sort of ongoing evolution, and the past version of you, that's your brand right now. So here's what I see a lot of established business owners doing more than anyone else. You built a brand early when the business was new, when the offer was different, when the clients you were talking to were at a different level. And it worked. Your brand attracted people, your content was resonating, and your website converted. But your business has evolved. Your offers have gotten sharper, your position has gotten clearer, your clients have gotten more sophisticated, your work has gotten better. So you've grown in ways that are real and significant and noticeable to anyone who's been following you for a while. But your brand hasn't always kept up. And it's not because you're not paying attention, because evolution like this is really gradual, and updating your brand can feel like a project that you only have time to do when things slow down. But things don't slow down. So your website still has language from 2 years ago. Your bio is still describing versions of your offers that got completely restructured. Your content still reflects priorities that have completely shifted. Your aesthetic still reads as the vibe you were going for when you first started out, rather than where you're actually operating from right now. And your brand is working, sort of. It's still attracting people, albeit sometimes the wrong people, but it's attracting people who are resonating with the older version of your positioning, people who expect the earlier versions of your offers, people who show up and quickly realize once they're inside that the work is more sophisticated and more specific than what your brand actually was preparing them for. So that gap between what your business is saying and what the business is actually delivering, that's what we want to solve for. And it's one of the most expensive things happening inside of an established business, not because it's dramatic and obvious, but because it's so gradual that you've stopped noticing it. So if you weren't already a little uncomfortable, let's get a little uncomfortable. Forget your website, forget your bio, forget the content that you planned this week, and ask yourself this one question super honestly. If someone who has been casually following you for a year had to describe what it is that you do and who you do it for, what do you think they would say? Not what you want them to say, but what would they actually say? Based on what they've seen from you, based on the content you've been putting out, based on the language that you use most frequently, based on the kind of clients that you're referring to, based on the problems that you talk about and the solutions that you provide. Would that description match where your business actually is right now? Would it attract the client you most want to work with? Would it position you at the level that you're actually operating at? Or would there be that gap? Because here's the thing about that gap, your audience can feel it even when they can't name it. A founder who has evolved significantly in their business, but whose brand is still speaking to an earlier version of that business, creates a very subtle disconnect. Things feel slightly off in a way that's really hard to articulate. So your content, sure, it's good, but something about it feels like it's aimed at somebody else. The offer is strong, but the framing around it feels like it's underselling what it actually does. That disconnect, it's not a content or a visibility problem. It's a brand alignment problem. And the more content that you stack on top of a misaligned brand, it just creates more of the same disconnection at higher volume. So, where does this disconnection hang out, right? Let's dig into this. The first place this disconnection hides is in your language. The words and phrases that you use when, let's say, you were first building your business, they have a way of sticking around long after the thinking behind them has evolved, right? So you might be operating from a completely different understanding of your work right now, but the language on your website and in your content, it's still reflecting this earlier version. And language is honestly, it's the most direct signal that your brand is going to send because before anyone really sees your work, they're reading your words, right? They're checking out your content, they're scoping you out on your website. And if those words are slightly behind, then the impression that they're forming about you is slightly behind as well. The second place that disconnection like this hides is in who you're actually talking to. So, most founders start out by casting a wider net than what they actually want, right? Your early content is it's speaking to a broader audience because that's how you build an audience. You're like, let me cast this net. I'm going to see who grabs on and sticks around. But at some point, your work gets more specific. And it gets specific enough that your ideal client becomes narrowed. You don't need such a wide net. But if your content isn't narrowing with it, you end up with a very large audience of people who maybe love your content and a very small percentage of people who are actually ready to hire you at the level you're operating at right now. So your brand becomes popular with people who aren't buyers and slightly misaligned with the people who would be. The third place this disconnection hides is in your positioning relative to other people in your space. So the thing that made you distinct in year one may have become super common a couple years later, right? And the thing that makes you genuinely a category of one right now may not be showing up in your brand at all. simply because you haven't had the conversation with yourself about what that actually is for you. So, in this episode, I don't want to leave you with a how-to list or something. Intentional branding at an established level, it's not about building something new. It's about auditing what's already there and making honest decisions about what to keep, what to update, and what to let go of. It starts with really looking at that gap between what your brand is currently communicating and what you actually want it to be communicating. Not based on what you think it should say, but based on evidence. What do your best clients say when they're referring you? What do your warmest leads say to you when they reach out? What does your content attract versus what your offers actually deliver? Where does the description of your work land so perfectly and where does it fall short compared to what you're actually doing? That gap is information. Everything useful about a rebrand starts from an honest assessment of that gap. And then it just becomes a decision, not a big project or even a full blown redesign. Just a decision about what you want your brand to be saying at this stage of business. Who are you talking to the most? What problems are you solving? What makes you the only reasonable choice for a specific kind of person in a specific kind of situation? What impression do you want forming in someone's mind when they think about you? That decision made very clearly is what makes everything else easier. Your content gets more focused, your language gets sharper. The clients who are finding you are more likely to be the right fit. The ones who hire you know more specifically what they're actually getting. The gap between what your brand promises and what your work delivers, it gets smaller. And that's the goal, to close that gap. That's what intentional branding actually is at this stage of business. It's not starting over. It's just getting honest about what's already there and making it say what you actually mean. Because honestly, most conversations about personal branding are aimed at people who are just starting out, right? Like it's mostly, hey, figure out who you are, define your niche, choose your colors, build your presence. And those conversations make sense for the beginning stages, but you're not at the beginning stages anymore. You've been building for years. You have a brand, it's out there, and it is already saying something. Your brand may have evolved with you in some places, but it has also stayed behind in others. And this happens. It happens to almost every business owner who's been doing this long enough to actually see their business grow. So the work isn't to build something new from scratch. It's to look very clearly at what's already there, decide what parts still fit, update the parts that don't, make the whole thing say what you actually mean about who you are and what you do right now. That's a brand worth building. And honestly, you've got more of it in place than you already, like, than you think you do. So it just takes that decision to get really clear. What do you want your brand to be saying? Do you like what it's currently saying? I hope you enjoyed this episode. Share it with a business owner who feels like their brand used to fit them so perfectly, but maybe it doesn't anymore. That happens. It happens with businesses that grow and evolve. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you next week for a brand new one. Bye, guys.